Welcome, everyone, to Voices of NCAJ, the podcast for the North Carolina Advocates for Justice. I'm Amber Nimocks, your host and Director of External Affairs for NCAJ. Before we get started, I'd like to thank today's episode sponsor, Advocate Capital. Advocate is passionate about helping plaintiffs' attorneys get better results for clients, mainly through their AdvoTrack case expense funding service. It allows firms to track case expenses and recover borrowing costs, which makes the net cost of borrowing zero on cases they win. You can learn more at advocatecapital.com. My guest today is Leslie Leake, a lead paralegal at the law offices of James Scott Farrin. At this year's NCAJ convention, she received NCAJ's Robby Price Award, which goes to a paralegal who has made significant contributions in the fight for justice on behalf of their clients and the citizens of North Carolina. In his nomination of Leake, attorney Preston W. Leslie called her one of the unspoken heroes in our fight for justice for everyday folks. Professional, intelligent, reserved, and she fights for our clients like they are her own family. Congratulations, Leslie, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, let's start at the beginning. How did your career as a paralegal begin? How old were you and what was your first job?
Okay, so my first job was actually in the legal field was when I was 18. I had not even graduated from high school yet.
Oh,
The week before I graduated, I was sworn in as a deputy clerk of court in Vance County. As a matter of fact, I was the youngest courtroom clerk in our district. And that job was interesting because what it did, it gave me an idea of the inner workings of a courtroom. So I became accustomed to working with judges, the local bar, probation officers, law enforcement. So that kind of whet my appetite for the legal field, and it gave me incredible soft skills, which was dealing with the public and calming down people who came in off the street trying to play a traffic ticket. And then the next minute, I may be in a room with someone in shackles, and they're telling me their whole life story of why they're in the courtroom that day because I'm taking down information for them. So it gave me those invaluable skills, which definitely whetted my appetite. So then I wanted to see what else is out there. I moved to Raleigh in my early 20s and started off, as a matter of fact, as a legal assistant receptionist. And when their paralegal left, I had been there all of 2 months. For some reason, I said, "Hey, do you think I could do that job?" And he said, "Yes."
Go back for just a second. You're 17 years old and you're sworn in as a deputy clerk of court. That is really young for, I have an 18-year-old son who I cannot imagine entrusting. He's a responsible young man, but
Right.
that is, how did you come to get involved with that position at such a young age?
But I knew I was not going to college right then, but I knew I had to get a job. And this is back a while when you went to the Employment and Securities Commission, and I met with a counselor. She went through her Rolodex and she said, "This is a good job for your set of skills. Here's how I want you to dress. Here's how I want you to address your resume." I went in to interview with the clerk of court, she was a legend in Vance County. So that was my first real interview, and I interviewed for the job. She actually chose someone else, but that did not work out, and she remembered me.
Oh, okay.
And she said, I want you to start. I said, "Well, I'm graduating from high school next week."
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That is terrific. And how long did you do that job in Vance County?
3.5 years.
Okay. And then you decided that you wanted to move on to you wanted to get out and see more of the world?
Yes. So I moved to Raleigh, and then that's how I transitioned into becoming a paralegal.
Okay. And so was there anyone in your family who had experience with the legal profession, or was it just that counselor who was like, give this a try?
It was that counselor. No one else in my family works in the legal field. So it was just me, and she's the one that pushed me in that direction.
Huh. Wow. That's amazing. Sometimes education works the way that it's supposed to, or the Employment Security Commission works the way it's supposed to. That's great.
Exactly. It did back then.
So in those early years when you're like going from, like you said, listening to somebody in shackles tell you their whole life story to like dealing with like the public, like just anybody who walks through the doors of the clerk's office. I mean, what was that like for your first years of like being in the working world?
It was eye-opening because I lived somewhat of a sheltered existence. So to come into
Mm-hmm.
that environment at 18, you think you know everything anyway, but
Mm,
what you're coming into is people. Why are they mad? They were mad. But I have a ticket. You're not answering my questions. Then
mm,
you're in the courtroom. You have judges. There. This is before computers. You're handwriting down everything. You have DAs coming at you. The public's walking up to you. The judges asking you questions, and it taught me how to remain calm.
okay.
So yes,
Wow.
that was an invaluable skill to learn how to remain calm. And our clerk was big with people are coming in on the worst, potentially sometimes the worst day of their life. They may be standing up in a state. They may be trying to file a lawsuit. And you're the person that's standing in between that. You are never to make them feel less than.
Mm, that's important. That
Yes.
is really important. And so then tell me about your next experience.
So my next experience was working with the defense counsel. And I was, like I said, I started off as a legal assistant secretary. And I asked him, can I do that job? And this defense attorney, he did a lot of briefs, a lot of appellate work, a lot of research, and
Mm-hmm.
he obviously saw something in me because I always had the desire to work. And I think he
Mm-hmm.
also saw someone that he could train. I didn't come in with any preconceived, well, this has to be done this way. I knew nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I knew nothing other than how the court system worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took me under his wings and he trained me. He showed me how to do legal research. And then it just, I want to do more. And that's where I went to paralegal school and I got my certification because I enjoyed it. I loved doing that work.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because, like, so that's not how the job market works today. Today you can't get past the robots on LinkedIn unless you have like checked. I have this experience. I have this certification.
Exactly.
I have this degree. Like the idea that someone who who has like people skills, soft skills, as you said,
Hmm.
but just is really willing to learn, is trainable, being able to find your way to someone who values that,
Yes.
gosh,
It
that's
was I would be probably harder to find, but what was where I'm at now at James Scott Farrin, they're probably one of the few firms I've seen that if you have the ability to learn, you don't necessarily have to have that degree. You don't have to have that certification. Like I've seen you see other job postings.
mhm,
If you're willing to learn and you have good people skills, they will work with you. And it's wonderful to see because again, experience is great. Do not get me wrong. But when
mhm,
they come in with that clean slate sometimes,
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome. And so this attorney that you worked for he was in the defense bar, right?
correct,
Uh-huh.
correct.
And how long did you work for that particular attorney?
9.5 years.
9.5 years. Okay.
Yes.
And so what was the work like?
The work was a lot of research based.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to the Department of Insurance. I developed contacts early on in the Department of Insurance where I would need to go to look at policies. I would go down to the archives. I knew someone down there. I would have
Mm,
to go. You were researching what do policies look like? When did this? Because the wording, that's where I learned wording mattered. Even where a comma was placed
mm,
mattered
mm.
because it changed the whole meaning of a policy and a lot of appellate work. So briefs do not scare me to appellate.
Nice, nice. And how long did you work for attorneys in the defense bar?
That was my only experience in the defense bar. Once I left that, I've always been the plaintiff side.
Okay. And now what was the decision to move to the plaintiff's side? Like, was it a sort of philosophical decision, or was it just an opportunity with an attorney that you wanted to work with?
It was at the time I wanted a change. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do something a little different because it was defense and it was a small firm. So I was the paralegal, I was the office manager, I was the runner, and I wanted to focus strictly because the paralegal was what fascinated me. I wanted to hone those skills, and I started looking for other jobs. And this job knew this attorney. They knew who he was and the caliber of work he did. And they said, well, they didn't even have a position for me, but they said, if you can work for him, we can find something for you.
Mm.
So that's how
Okay.
I got my first job in the plaintiff side. And I had never worked in the plaintiff side. I was mass torts, complex lit.
Okay. Okay. What size firm was it that you moved to?
It was Martin and Jones. It was a pretty decent sized firm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that change your work life?
It changed my work life in that I think I brought in, since I had the defense background, I knew what defense was looking for.
Mm,
Where
mm,
some of them never worked on defense. And they would go, why would I do that? I said, because if you're on the defendant side, that's what they're looking at. And also taught me I knew what not to do. Sometimes when you would see things
mhm,
coming from the plaintiff's world, sometimes you would see mistakes and not the attention to detail. I knew not to do that because I knew how that was frowned on and how it was
mhm,
viewed from the defense side.
mm, mm.
So going to the plaintiff's world I brought in the defense skills, but I also learned it was it was more detailed on the plaintiff side because the plaintiffs, you're the one who has to prove your case.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And how long were you with Martin and Jones?
9 years.
9 years. Okay.
Yes.
And then how long have you been with James Scott Farrin?
There was a little break in between where I went to work for the state, but I've been at James Scott Farrin going on 8 years now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
And then at some point you decided that you needed to get a college degree.
Yes, ma'am.
And what fueled that?
It was at some point I realized that I enjoyed being a paralegal, but if there are other opportunities out there, am I limiting myself by not having that degree? So
Mhm.
I decided business administration would be a good topic, but also Western Carolina at the time was the only one offering business administration and law.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, that's a good combination. So it gave me even a deeper dive into the legal field and definitely developing those leadership skills that has
Mhm.
definitely helped me here at James Scott Farrin. But I had the opportunity to know I was able to do that online. I carried a full case, a full schedule, plus work full time.
Wow. So you
Yes,
did 12 like academic hours
I did.
and worked full time?
And I worked full time. There were
And
some 3 o'clock mornings.
how
I
old were you at this point?
was in my early 40s.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes.
And children or no
None.
children?
No, none. I don't know if I could pull that off with children. Maybe
All
they're
right.
expected to be fed.
It's like, okay. Yeah, I have this theory that we do for some folks we do college backwards. When you're 18 years
Mm,
old and you're just getting out of high school, and you don't have any idea, like you said, like you think you know everything but you don't know anything, and then we march you off to like spend $100,000 on like getting like a college education, and then you're supposed to like know what you want to do with it and why you went and got it in the first place. And
exactly.
I think that for a lot of people, I mean, it's so much more valuable to like
Mm,
understand what you want out of a 4-year degree before
I
you go and get it.
I agree.
So, that's amazing. That's
I
fabulous.
valued that degree because I had to pay for it. I definitely valued it more.
You weren't going to skip any classes.
No.
You were up at night doing it when you knew you had to get it to work in the morning.
Exactly.
So it was so how has that informed your professional life as having that degree in its business administration and law?
And law. Again, you would think by then I'm 20 years in, I would know, but it it gave you a deeper, it gave me better critical thinking and critical analytical skills
Uh-huh.
that it definitely improved there because now they're really teaching you how to look at a matter. And then from a leadership point, sometimes you make snap decisions because you think, okay, that's the best. I'm going with my gut. But then that business administration degree, and I also have a minor in management. It taught me how to think through a situation
Mm,
and look at it from all angles, and that has definitely informed me as a team lead.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's not instinct,
It's, some
it's
of it's instinct, but then another part of it, okay, is it what you think it is?
right, right.
Now let's look
Interesting.
at it. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I've heard that you've been involved in some very interesting cases where you've used some of that your experience in the courthouse and as a researcher. Um, tell me about some of your most interesting cases.
One was it was at Martin and Jones. It was a securities fraud case, and we had to go to Georgia because the special master had closed down. They had closed down the business. All of their documents was in this huge warehouse, nothing
Mm-hmm.
but boxes and file cabinets, and the documents we needed were on the back side of file cabinets. So for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to wear a two-piece suit that day. But here I am climbing on top of those file cabinets to get the
Oh,
documents. And
wow.
sure enough, in those boxes were the documents that we needed. And the attorney, he wanted trial at that one. Here at James Scott Farrin, I also worked in a department called triage. We're investigators because what James Scott Farrin figured out early on is get that evidence, get to the witnesses as quickly as possible. Because a year
Mm-hmm.
later, witnesses disappear, 911 tapes disappear. So we get that early. And I
Mm,
called one place, the business where the accident happened, and it was a pawn shop. And I said, wait, no, can we see your surveillance? And they really didn't want to do it. So I happened to live in the town where it happened. I can be there in 10 minutes. So here I go again, trace them all to the pawn shop. They had dogs in there. They were barking. The begging them, can I see your surveillance tape? And they took me to the back room and the dogs were still biting that, but trying to bite my ankle. But I got their surveillance tape
wow.
that helped the case. So it, what can we do to help the client? Can
Mm,
we get it early?
mm,
What do I need to do? And not being afraid, and definitely having that clerk's office experience. There's red tape sometimes when you call a clerk's office, and having that background and knowing what can be done and what cannot be done, and speaking their language has definitely worked in my favor in getting things done.
wow. Sounds like we should put a body cam on you and like this could be the next reality TV
Reality show.
show to come from the Triangle area.
We'll go anywhere.
So it's got to be interesting for you to work with younger paralegals who, have maybe gone and gotten their certification, and like have done the sort of academic or, office experience, but have maybe not had the kind of real world experience that you have had. How do you try to help them understand all that there is to your role?
I help them understand. I want them to understand. Be curious. And as happy as I am to give you a go by or a template, understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because
Mm,
there's a reason why you're doing it. There's a consequence if you do it wrong. So when you're doing something, if you're preparing a document, if you're drafting a document, have you looked up the rules that paper is based on? Do you know why you're doing it? Because if you know the why, you're going to be more careful. You're going to
mm,
make sure
mm,
and
mm.
then take accountability. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Everyone makes mistakes, but take accountability for it. Ask for advice. Ask for feedback. Stay curious. Never. It's easy as you keep doing this role to get a little bit lax. Stay curious. Be willing to learn. And that's the biggest advice I give them. If you haven't gotten your certification yet, get your certification because now you have to study for it. that's going to help you in the long run. You're going to become better acquainted with the rules and the statutes. If you haven't gone back to paralegal school, go back to paralegal school. Go to paralegal school. And that's going to help you with the critical thinking aspect of it. So it's just stay
Mm-hmm.
curious.
Mm-hmm. Stay curious. That's really good advice. That's really good advice for everybody, but definitely I can see how it would change the game for folks who maybe have only been behind a desk answering calls for the attorney. Yeah.
Right.
Understand why you're doing what you're doing too. That's so
Yes.
key. So
Yes.
key. Yeah.
And ask questions. Ask questions.
Ask questions. Yeah. Absolutely. Ask questions. Well, welcome to, you are a new member of the NCAJ Paralegal Division.
Yes,
Welcome.
ma'am. Thank you.
I hope that you will we'll see you at our CPE events, and you'll
Cool.
be sharing your wisdom and experience with our members.
I will. Thank you. I will definitely be doing that.
Cool. Excellent. Well, Leslie, congratulations again on your award. We're so glad that you are part of the paralegal division, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we go, I would like to thank our Circle of Leadership program sponsors, Abrams and Abrams, Henson First, the law offices of James Scott Farrin, the law offices of John McCabe, Whitley Law Firm, Brown Moore and Associates, Edwards Kirby, Johnson and Groninger, DeMaio Law Offices, the law offices of Wallace and Graham, Horton and Mendez Injury Attorneys, Kuntz and Smith, the law offices of Jason E. Taylor, Sumwalk Group Workers' Comp and Trial Lawyers, and Orndorff Law Firm. These firms are supporting NCAJ's mission as founding members of the Circle of Leadership. Find out how your firm can join the Circle of Leadership at ncaj.com/circle. Thanks, everyone, for listening.